with us. Steve, Bucci?
Bucci.
My apologies, yeah. Steve.
No problem.
Welcome to the program. Steve Bucci, PhD, Senior Research Fellow, Defense and Homeland Security with the Heritage Foundation. Heritage.org is the website. Steve, the CISPA bill. This thing is giving a whole lot of us a lot of pause. And I don't understand why an organization and a group that historically has fought against big government would embrace CISPA. This, for people who don't know what CISPA is, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act. It's the ultimate Big Brother bill, is it not?
No, it's really not, Tom. The CISPA is, as written, is actually a fairly reasonable way for us to improve cybersecurity, particularly voluntary information sharing between the federal government and various private entities without violating individual liberties or giving the bad guys an advantage in this fight.
But it completely exempts itself from the Freedom of Information Act, for example. I mean, there's no oversight. There's no protections on this thing. It supersedes all other provisions of laws protecting privacy, including the Fourth Amendment. How can you tell me this is a good thing?
Well, it's a little bit of an overstatement to say that it obviates the Fourth Amendment and has
where
no
in
protections.
CISPA does it require does it require a person to swear an oath that you have probably committed a crime before they can snoop on your internet activities? Where is it?
What they're going to be doing is sharing threat information, which is predominantly technical information, not, they're not going to be passing your emails along.
How do you know?
Because that's not what the information sharing provisions provide for.
There is nothing in there that prohibits it.
But there's no reason for them to share it.
But there's nothing in there that prohibits it. If you're giving this, I'm making the Heritage Foundation argument. You give these kinds of power to government, it's going to use them.
Well, they're not giving that kind of power to government. What the majority of the information that's going to be passed, frankly, is going to be from the federal government to private entities, letting them know the type of threat profiles that are out there, the types of malware that are being used.
And those private entities then have blanket immunity from any future lawsuits? How is this a good thing?
No, they don't have blanket immunity. They have immunity as long as they have acted in good faith, meaning that if they pass information back to the federal government, that they have done so specifically to let people know the kind of cyber attacks that they have undergone, and that's the information they pass. They're not going to be passing wholesale piles of data from their employees or anything like that.
Let me read this. This is one of the most egregious aspects of CISPA is that it gives blanket legal immunity to any company that shares its customers' private information. In other words, if Microsoft were to share your browsing history with the government, despite your posing no security threat, you would be barred from filing a lawsuit against them. Without any legal recourse for citizens to take against corporate bad behavior, companies will be far more inclined to share private information.
Well, whoever wrote that, I would respectfully disagree with them. That is a misinterpretation.
The attorneys at the Center for American Progress wrote that.
Well, that may be, but they're misinformed. And they're erroneous at this point.
Citizens have to trust that companies like Facebook aren't going to share our personal information. These guys make money sharing our information. That's their business model.
And they do. They do it commercially on a pretty regular basis. But the federal government has no particular interest in that. They're looking for information on cyber intrusions, malware profiles.
They already have the ability to do that.
Used.
The federal government already has the power to do that.
They have the ability to collect it on their own networks. They don't have the ability to collect it on private sector entities.
Certainly they can. They can go to before one. What are those courts called? The
FISA court.
The FISA court. Thank you very much. They can go before the FISA. In fact, they don't even have to go before the FISA court. They've got 3 days that they can snoop on you before they even have to ask permission to snoop on you. I mean, this has been the case for a long, long time.
But that's not what they're doing. They're looking for information. I mean, the federal government does not know when Company X has experienced the cyber intrusion. They don't have sensors on every single company or even the majority of companies in the United States. They just don't have the ability to do that, nor the particular desire to do it.
You don't think that if a company thinks that it's under attack from a foreign power, that it's going to call the FBI and say, hey, we've got a problem? Yes, and they should. They don't need CISPA to do that. The federal government is there to protect them. They don't need CISPA to do that. Again, this is big government run amok. And I don't understand why this got partisan. Why most Democrats are opposed to this and most Republicans are supporting it, other than that there are very large corporations who, with this information can make more money, and certainly with the government revenues, it's basically now if you're in the computer business, you too could be part of the military-industrial complex and make even more money. And they're lobbying very aggressively and giving a lot of money and campaign contributions to Republican politicians, but it seems like it's the opposite of the message that I have historically heard from small government Republicans. Well, the problem, Tom, is that right now we are facing a large degree of cyber espionage that's going on. It's an unprecedented level. The technology allows bad guys to come in and get information from our government entities or from unprotected civilian entities. But giving lawsuit immunity is hurting this country. But giving lawsuit immunity to private corporations that are going to take our information and share it with each other for profit is not going to help save us from the Chinese. I mean, we're very much now at one of those Ben Franklin moments, where those who would sacrifice a little temporary security, who would gain a little temporary security in exchange for their freedom deserve neither. I mean, go ahead. Well, again, Tom, that's not what's going on here. Right now, as the CISPA as passed, after the amendments that were made when it got to the House floor, there is a specific provision that says that there is liability if the company has passed that information in bad faith. If they're passing that information, it's either the wrong kind of information. But that's going to take a whistleblower. I mean, that's going to those kind of things. All it takes is someone filing a lawsuit and saying they did it in bad faith. But then you have to demonstrate it, and to demonstrate it, you're going to have discovery, and you're going to have to get information that they're saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's classified." Well, I don't think. Good luck on that. To that. There's also a provision in CISPA, and this is quoting from CISPA. It says, as the bill is currently written, CISPA to apply, quote, notwithstanding any other provision of law, end quote. This is right from the law. In other words, privacy restrictions in place don't apply to CISPA. Well, actually, that line is there so as to not push it past other provisions of law. It does not supersede already existing protections that are out. Ars Technica noted, and I'm quoting them, if a company decides that your private emails, your browsing history, your healthcare records, or any other information would be helpful in dealing with a cyber threat, the company can ignore laws that would otherwise limit its disclosure. Isn't there something wrong with that? I don't think that's the correct interpretation. There's absolutely no reason in any way, shape, or form that they would pass that. Then why is the president threatening to veto this? That you'd have to ask the president. I'm not sure why he's threatening to veto it. You don't know why the president of the United States would want to veto this bill, and yet you're going to advocate for it? You haven't evaluated the arguments against it? I have evaluated the arguments, and the president's position is primarily a partisan one, and I think he's in error. Huh. Okay, Steve, say it again, please. Bucci. Steve Bucci, Ph.D., heritage.org. Steve, thanks so much for being with us today. My pleasure.